Okay, here's another new exciting find from mankind's origins, just found this week and released today, June 27th, 2021. So, whenever you see this and more relate to it, it's about a Nasher Ramla homo. They're referring to it as homo rather than a hominid because it looks like it's more a species of homo, which is missing along our tree, and something that was perhaps a blend that became, or due to other hybridizations, became other people. And they've made a few projections about it, and I believe they're going through full genetic studies and seeing what they can pull out of it now. And of course, knowing that it is a different hominid, much like Neanderthal and so on, they should be able to get a correct answer out of which. Again, it's called Nasher Ramla homo, and this group are an extinct population of archaic humans that lived during the Middle Pleistocene in what you call modern-day Israel. The first Nasher Ramla homo individual was identified in 2021 from remains at the Nasher Ramla site. The taxonomy says that the Nesher Ramla site was discovered in karst depression following coring from a nearby cement factory between 2010 and 2011, and the site was excavated, discovering archaeological deposits from the Middle Paleolithic, and evidence of a lithic industry, which is stoneworking, was found, with artifacts such as Levant and lithic cores discovered during an excavation, which are associated with Neanderthals. In 2021, excavations led by paleontologist Israel Herskovich discovered 5 pieces of brain case and a near-complete lower jaw. The remains were dated to 140 to 120,000 years old during the Middle Pleistocene. The specimen was believed to be one of the last survivors of a population that would contribute to Neanderthals and East Asian Homo. It's interesting that he puts that out there. So he's saying this might be one of the last survivors of Neanderthal origin type people, and East Asian Homo. Not necessarily hominids, but there could be a blend in too. Now, recently we've done a video where we talked about how in Africa there were hominids, not necessarily homo, living on till a very modern time. And then we have a homo, which happens very late comparative wise, almost like a land of the lost that people never referred to, which was Homo erectus and its variants, if you will. What we're looking at here is something that's more of a homo type of person, or much more modern, close, or anatomically modern humans, easily well distinguished, that are coming out, and they feel that it's a blend, and this blend led to Neanderthals, which are mainly known for into Europe and into the West. But also he talks about East Asian Homo. And I'm waiting for another paper to come out on this after this, of course, because they could maybe discern what they're talking about, and if they are trying to infer Orientals. For I have another video coming up where it shows that there were archaic humanids or hominids living along with a modern form of human, like what they might be talking about in this East Asian Homo, which led to the modern people that we see as Orientals, but not necessarily referred to as East Asian. And of course, Asia is a misnomer because it goes all the way and touches the Mediterranean. Anatolia is Asia Minor. So the people of Asia, and even ancient Asia, aren't what we think of today when we think of, hey, get Asian food or something along that line in a modern Western vernacular. Other people oppose this idea a little bit of that concept, if you will. Philip Reitmeyer of Harvard did not agree with the findings, believing the skull to in fact be an early Neanderthal type and discuss the possibility of a Neanderthal population migrating from Europe. Now, recently I've made the comment in at least 3 videos that we keep mulling over the fact of, well, okay, so Neanderthals were out there and modern humans came out of Africa and then bred with them and they disappeared, and we still have 2% of their genetics, little more in the Asian type people, which this might infer off of, which helps us out in that question. But where did they come from? Well, in Herskovic's idea, it seems like he's saying that they were one type of hybrid form that came out that was a Caucasoid type Neanderthal that came out at one time, and then something radically different. Because we know we can tell the genetics of that. And so this is again verifying this hybrid. But if it's, if it starts to get like Herskovic's idea, it seemed like it was a hybridization machine throwing out things, and then other things that weren't really related to those things came out and bred with other things at another time. But then again, where do we get such a variation actually in Homo erectus forms that we see all the way from Asia to Europe and the African forms, which we talked about recently too? So there's over 6,000 stone tools excavated in the fossil-bearing sediment, though. The Nasher Ramla homo mastered stone tool production and technologies which were previously known among the Neanderthals and Homo sapiens, which Zeidner interpreted as evidence of cultural interactions between Nasher Ramla and Homo sapiens populations, that they must have gotten it from them. So another way of looking at this, I believe, is that what we're looking at is a hybrid population of Neanderthal and ancient Homo sapiens which came out. Now again, we're going at the 140 to 120,000 years. But if you'll remember, over a year ago now, well, it's been 2, we came out showing that Homo sapiens sapiens, our modern human in its modern form, has been found not at 200,000 years, but at over 315,000 years old in Jebel Arud Cave in northern Africa. And if they were going to come out of this, it'd be a simple thing to follow the coast over a series of generations, finding good spots like fishing holes, and looping your way on out of Africa, just like you could do if you hit the Nile and went down the other way, or curled over back and forth with the Red Sea being there. And it would almost apex you to a point in the corner there. So these modern humans that had come out, and of course we're going with a 70,000-ish timeline, that keeps having to float because of all these other things that have been found. And everybody tries to look at that so suspiciously, but really it's going to happen if they start finding things, that are between this range, and then they find something that lops over the end of that, then you have to start going with it. What's crazy with all the amount of finds we've been finding recently, everything that you really learned in school, or at least I did 35 years ago or more, is kind of changed, and they wouldn't be able to say it the same way. If they did, they would be omitting what is even currently known, and so we have this problem. Let's take a look at where this exactly is. And so this is a relief map here. Oh, well, it had the pins in it whenever it showed before. Maybe I should just zoom back and go in, because it's right in this here, and so what we call the Holy Lands, and of course ancient Canaanites were living there, the Phoenicians and so on that we talked about, going back before pre-biblical times and going on, and believe you me, this is going well back before biblical times. So one of the sites that they like to mention is this Queza, and I believe this is the same way, Sakul and Quezna hominids that are found near slopes of Mount Carmel in Galilee. And if you'll look, this is something that has an extreme hominid type appearance to it. Something very Homo erectus, if you will, and quite a bit prognostic, deep skull, occipital bun, very low crown on it. There was a kid that was found, and so on. And there's these different skulls too. You can see the morphology of this, and then this. How that is quite different. And they were making notes of how these people were different, and perhaps these were progenitors of certain types and so on that come off of it. But and of course these were found in these caves and these rock shelters that were here. But let's try to stay on track. Let's go over here and look at this science news from Science Alert. It's a site I've used a couple of times before that we're probably familiar with. But here's some of the pieces they found of the skull and the jaw that's there. And strikingly, right off the bat, I can tell you that this person doesn't have a chin. And so this isn't actually a modern Homo sapiens, so what is it? And it's clues like that that they are easily able to tell, and widths, and of course I can't look down on it in 3D, the thing, but the teeth are a little bit way too large for it. The little dentations that you see for nerves running into the jaw forms and stuff look weird. That one on the skull is the same. Large penetration things. Part of the brow ridge and so on. There's another picture coming up where they loop it in with a skull and try to show you more of what it would really look like in the pieces. So this is a previously unknown type of ancient human, and it's been discovered in the Levant, more than 120,000 years old. Homo sapiens lived side by side with this type of ancient human that we didn't know about until now. That's according to a new fossil evidence of this human uncovered by archaeologists. Fragments, ancient skull, jawbones, and teeth, which seem to fit both Neanderthal and Homo sapiens, but also neither they speak of. This newly discovered hominin type could be the ancestor to Neanderthal populations in Europe, answering the mystery of how these populations were infiltrated with sapiens DNA before their arrival in those regions, because they find it in those regions, so there's already interaction. Again, where does Neanderthal actually just pop up at, and what could you get to breed with something that would end up looking like a Neanderthal, that would have to be more modern looking probably than our modern thoughts, if you will, than what we think of actually as Homo erectus, that you could have formed this out of in a hybrid. It's why I believe, and a lot of people are believing and showing here too, and also the Homo erectus forms themselves are being spread and fibrated out into multiple names like Heidelbergensis and so on, because they're not necessarily the exact same thing. It's variations on a theme, and once we put it all together and get a timeline, we can see that there were a few mixes of things that went on. In other places, it conspicuously shows that the archaic form is what lived on until a real modern time, and then integration from already modern humans kind of popped it into what form we see today. That happens in Australia as well as the Orient, as well as in deepest Africa. I'm going to do a series about that coming up, but so they've called the new ancient hominid or human type as the Nasher Ramla people after the archaeological dig site near Israel where they're discovered. So it's of great scientific importance, said Israel Herkovich of Tel Aviv University in Israel, a lead author of a paper describing the bones. It puzzled us to make new sense of previously found human fossils, add another piece to the puzzle of human evolution, and understand the migrations of humans in the world. Although they lived so long ago, the late Middle Pleistocene of 474,000 to 130,000 years ago, these Nasher Ramla people can tell us a fascinating tale revealing a great deal about their descendants, evolution, and way of life. Well, if they're referring to that archaic of a time, are they trying to infer that they found any of these inside of Africa coming out are connective? Are they saying that these people for a 500,000 years have lived outside of Africa, and this is showing an integration from people that came in? See, that map a minute ago showed this little declination line, almost like, well, that's the farthest that it seems that Neanderthals seemed to go. It's like he couldn't seem to pass that river delta that was there coming up right after the thing. But we all, of course, know that ancient Caucasoids had always done that, and even we have Cro-Magnon man, if you look at his range, which shows you a lot of sites in North Africa, as well as the ones we're real familiar with through Spain and France, and all the way around the whole Mediterranean, except sparsely in this area for some reason. So they can tell us this fascinating tale, revealing a great deal about their descendants' evolution and way of life. The remains were excavated from around 8 meters below ground at the open-air Ramla site. There, archaeologists found a large cache of fossils, mostly abundant of animal bones, but also some stone tools and some intriguing fragments of ancient human bones. Ancient horses were found there. Yeah, they found the ancient cow before it was ever domesticated, known as the auroch type, Taurus and so on. They found those, but then they also found deer that were there. And ancient human bones that were there also that are very intriguing, apparently. They consisted of parietal bones in the top and the sides of the skull, and an almost complete mandible or jaw, including a complete molar and most of the dental roots. The researchers dated these remains to between 140 and 120,000 years ago. Virtual reconstruction analysis and comparison of these bones against other fossilized hominid bones reveals something interesting. The mandible and teeth seem to be more like the jaws and teeth of Neanderthals, but the parietal bones were more similar to those of archaic homo. Like there might be some type of blend. And so if you look here, they're showing you how it plays in to the skull using an X-ray in 3D. But if you look down at the bottom too, it doesn't have a chin, really. And it doesn't look like it is really worn away. A prominent jaw, with no chin. That doesn't necessarily mean anything, because you can get a hybrid that doesn't get all of the traits. But one thing that's known is if you get a chin, then you must have had interaction with a Homo sapiens that was akin to and leading to modern Cro-Magnon man, and through that. In addition, the reconstruction of skull was very different from that of Homo sapiens, with larger teeth and a different skull structure and no chin. Well, they mention it right there. The discovery suggests one of the last surviving populations of Middle Pleistocene Homo in the region from about 400,000 years ago. So see, this is pre-chin they're talking about, as opposed to something like 315,000 years ago and coming in. If you look at 315, it still has some prognathism in it and not a prominent chin. It takes till about this time right here they're speaking of, where all of a sudden, pow, here comes this person with this prominent chin that pretty much every human on the planet has now. After the arrival of H. sapiens 200,000 years ago, the two types of humans shared the Levant for around 100,000 years, the researchers said. This is an extraordinary discovery. So, we have never imagined that alongside Homo sapiens, archaic Homo roamed in the area so late in human history. you see, like I was telling you before and have before a lot on the site here, whenever I grew up, they made it almost seem like, well, it went from Neanderthal became Homo sapiens, Homo sapiens became Cro-Magnon, Cro-Magnon became Homo sapiens sapiens. Something along that line, and then all of a sudden they found enough things that overlapped where they went, okay, well, it wasn't like that. And one didn't really form from the other. In fact, there's some hybrids kind of going on here, and then all of a sudden they started finding these skulls that were real close to a modern time, and they still look like the old skulls, versus them finding things that are at least, well, around the same time, 55,000 years ago, that look just exactly like modern European types that we have today in modern humans, alongside of something they were still saying was Homo erectus. In fact, in the one about Africa I did recently, that rolled all the way up until about 4,400 BC, apparently, and then changed into a modern form. So, since the Levant connects Asia, Africa, and Mediterranean, humans migrating between these regions would have passed through, making it potentially hot spot for intermingling. Our findings imply that the infamous Neanderthals of Western Europe are only the remnants of a much larger population that lived here in the Levant, and not the other way around, Hershkovich said. The researchers also found similarities with other fossils that had previously puzzled scientists because they could not be fit neatly into either Neanderthal or Homo categories. Fossils from the Taboon Cave from 160,000 years, Zutia 250,000 years ago, and the Quesim Cave from 400,000 years ago may also belong to the Nasher Ramla people. But then we also just looked at that Quesim Cave type thing, and there was a variation on a theme going on right there too, where what was confusing is there's something that looks extremely Homo erectus along with something that looks a little bit more Homo sapiens. Fairly easily discernible. So, what they say now, if that's the case, the findings could also solve the mystery of missing populations of Neanderthals who had mated with Homo sapiens over 200,000 years ago and before the latter's arrival in Europe. Right? The traces of these ancient association in European Neanderthal DNA had puzzled scientists. So what they're telling you is that in the earliest of Neanderthals, they were still finding Homo sapien type remnants in that, and it didn't make any sense for them to find it because they're supposed to be finding these separated people that got together, and there might be some telling of it, but it looked like that there's another hybridization that seemed to form the Neanderthal. This seems to implicate that it came out of Africa and formed, and they're trying to say it went one way, whenever the guy from Harvard is saying, I think it just proves that it goes the other way. So hopefully there's a deeper paper about this, and if you get a better understanding on this, let me know. But so he tells you also the oldest fossils that show Neanderthal features are found in Western Europe, so researchers generally believe that Neanderthals originated there. However, migrations of different species from Middle East and into Europe may have provided genetic contributions to the Neanderthal gene pool during the course of their evolutions. And this complicated story, but we also are learning that it is the interactions between different species and human species that is in the past that were much more convoluted than we previously appreciated. The research has been published in 2 papers in Science, here and here, they say, but again, you can find it on Science Alert. Scientists have found hints of a previously unknown type of hominid or human. We'll look at one more site here. And in this site, if it's going to load, Shows the same situation, but it's there that he talks about the deer and the findings that are also inlaid in it. Yeah, it's going to lock up and try to figure out how to figure it, not to pull it up for me. So, irregardless, guys, as more comes out on this, I'll let you know. Peace.